Supercars are one of the clearest signs of wealth. For many, they are the definition of success, being one of the first big purchases many people would make if they became rich. They are what kids put on their walls in the hopes of one day owning one. But they are also masterpieces of design and engineering, combined to make extreme machines so different to a typical car. There have been many iconic and important supercars since the term began with the Lamborghini Miura. Here is my list of the 10 most important supercars ever. Please let me know in the comments what your list is. But without further ado, let's get into the countdown of the 10 most important supercars of all time. The Zonda was the first Pagani. It began the line of some of the most elegantly crafted cars of the 21st century. It was Horacio Pagani's answer to Lamborghini, who he left in 1991. It was one of the first instances of a new brand entering the supercar world. The Zonda is one of the most recognisable supercars of the last few decades due to its bold design and stunning interior. It began with the C12 in 1999, which used a modified version of the Mercedes V12 engine paired with a manual gearbox. New versions followed with larger and more powerful versions of the V12 due to tuning from AMG. Plenty of special editions were made, including the Zonda F, Zonda R, which was a track-only version which held the Nürburgring's production car record, the Cinque, of which 5 were only made, and the Tricolore, which was limited to 3 cars. There were also a few one-off models made specially for certain customers, and the end of its production was marked by the HP Barchetta, which was made to celebrate Horacio Pagani's 60th birthday. Similarly to the Zonda, the CC8S was the first car for a brand that has changed the world of high-performance vehicles and has helped create what we know today as the hypercar. It was the first car to feature now famous doors that are seen on every Koenigsegg. It held the world record for the most powerful production engine, producing 655 horsepower from a 4.6 litre Ford supercharged V8. This set the precedent of Koenigsegg being able to extract crazy horsepower from V8s rather than needing a heavier V12. Only 6 of these were made, but it certainly made an impression when production began in 2002. The CCR, which has replaced it, would make more headlines as it took the record for the world's fastest production car, but the CC8S was what started it all. It was so important for the brand that it is being honoured with the new CC850, which pays homage to the first ever Koenigsegg. This isn't just one car, but these 3 are all referred to as parts of the Holy Trinity. This saying was used to describe other cars, but these 3 make up the most recognised and most important Holy Trinity in the car world. They helped to introduce hybrids into the world of high performance and gave us a glimpse into the future. The most sought after and probably iconic member of the trio is the Ferrari LaFerrari. It was the first hybrid Ferrari and the most powerful from the Italian brand at the time. It featured the famous Ferrari V12 and a KERS system derived from Formula 1. This produced a combined 959 horsepower, giving it a top speed of 218 miles per hour and a 0 to 62 time of 2.6 seconds. After the production of the standard LaFerrari came the Aperta, a convertible version. The next most iconic member is probably the McLaren P1, which also used a hybrid system and rear-wheel drive similar to the Ferrari. It is seen as a successor to the F1. It is widely considered to be the fastest out of the 3 on the racetrack, as it has the fastest lap out of the Holy Trinity around Silverstone. It used a twin-turbo V8 with an in-house electric motor, which makes a combined 903 horsepower. It has a top speed of 217 miles per hour, does 0 to 62 in 2.8 seconds. Out of the 3, it has the most variants, with the track-only P1 GTR being the most notable, with more aggressive aero and being lighter. Lazante also converted some GTRs to be road legal. They also made other variants such as the P1 LM, which was a modified GTR for the road, the GTR 18, an even more extreme version of the track car, and the Spider, an open-top version. The P1 GT was modified by Lazante again, who paid homage to the F1 GT. It had more aggressive bodywork and aero parts, and a different interior. The last member of the Holy Trinity is the Porsche 918 Spider. It featured a naturally aspirated V8 with 2 electric motors. All combined, the Porsche put out 875 horsepower, which powered it to a 2.5 second 0 to 62 time and a top speed of 218 miles per hour. The Visac package featured more carbon fibre to reduce weight and improved aerodynamics. The Holy Trinity had different takes on the same concept, but it showed that hybridization could be used for performance rather than just to improve fuel economy and reduce emissions. They helped to show the future of supercars and foreshadowed the future of hypercars. At number 7 is the Bugatti EB110. It's another very recognisable supercar that symbolised the return of the brand. Bugatti was bought by Romano Artioli in 1987, and production of the factory began the following year. Development of the EB110 began when the company was revived, and by 1990, Bugatti had a prototype to show off. There was plenty of argument from senior figures, with many different designs and even a complete change of chassis. The EB110 GT was revealed in 1991, 110 years after Ettore Bugatti passed away. The EB110 Supersport, or SS as it was known, was revealed in 92, and it was lighter and more powerful. Both cars were impressive, using quad-turbo V12 engines, producing either 553 or 603 horsepower. Famously, Michael Schumacher owned one, although he crashed it blaming the brakes. The EB110 was sold in low numbers, and it couldn't solve the company due to it purchasing Lotus and developing the EB112. Only 139 EB110s were made over 4 years, but the car lived on under different names. Daewoo bought the remaining parts of the car and made 4 between 1999 and 2000. They would later make lightweight versions of the Supersport, which were 230 kilos lighter than the original. The B Engineering Adonis used the chassis from the Bugatti, but used a larger version of the V12 and weighed 70 kilos less due to the switch to rear-wheel drive. Only 21 were made. There was also a Brabus version of the Supersport, but it was mainly featuring a different interior and engine modifications, though little else is known. The EB110 was made in small quantities, but inspired the VW takeover and set the precedent for the Veyron with the quad-turbo setup. The Porsche 959 was important because it was a more modern supercar with clear motorsport roots, something that was less common at the time. It was also a pioneer of all-wheel drive, being one of Porsche's first all-wheel drive cars. It was also the world's fastest road-legal production car when it launched, with it being able to reach 211 miles per hour. It began as a test for Porsche, who were looking into all-wheel drive technology to implement on the 911. It was first intended to compete in a legendary rally Group B category, famous for having some of the fastest cars competing, although by the time the cars were built and homologated, Group B was cancelled. It was powered by a 2.8 litre twin-turbo flat-six engine, putting out 444 horsepower. Its gearbox also had an off-road gear, which was unique. 345 cars were built in total, which was more than the 200 homologated models required. The car also had another impact though, and it is thanks to Bill Gates. The 959 was never designed to meet US safety regulations, and Porsche were not keen on selling them to the US due to the money they would lose because of the exchange rate. Therefore, when Bill Gates imported one in 1988, he was unable to drive it and it was stored by customs. Imported cars could only be brought into the country 25 years after production, but after 13 years of legal battle, Gates was able to create a new law. The Show or Display Amendment now allows cars of significance or rarity to be brought into the USA before they're 25 years old, as long as they aren't driven more than 2,500 miles a year. The 959 had long-lasting impact, not just on the law, but also on development of all-wheel drive, and it's one of the most iconic supercars of the 1980s. The Countach is one of the most recognisable cars of all time. With its wedge shape and angular design, alongside the iconic vents behind the windows, it changed Lamborghini styling forever. Development began in 1970, with the first prototype being shown in 1971 and the final model starting production in 1974. The first model was the LP400, which had a 3.9 litre V12 putting out 370 horsepower. In 1978, the LP400S became available, and despite it having slightly less power, it was an upgraded version. It featured wider tyres and optional rear wing. The LP500S had a larger 4.8 litre engine and was more powerful. The LP5000QV had a larger 5.2 litre V12 and put out 449 horsepower. There were a few special models, like the 25th anniversary edition. The Walter Wolf Countach had an upgraded engine and some other upgrades. The Countach was a generational supercar that was what many had dreamed about and was an aspiration for so many petrol heads. Pair this with it changing the design language for Lamborghinis to come, and it was a very important supercar. The Bugatti Veyron is one of the most iconic cars of the last 20 years and was something almost unseen before. With all models having over 1,000 horsepower, it was a gateway to the hypercars we see today and put Bugatti back on the map a decade after the EB110. Development began shortly after Volkswagen bought Bugatti in 1998 and concepts were shown off. The EB118 and the EB128 were shown off in 1998. More concepts followed, using Chiron and Veyron as parts of the name. The decision to produce the car was made in 2001, and the prototype was ready in 2003, though it took until 2005 production to begin. The Veyron used an 8-litre quad-turbo W16 engine, which made 1,001 horsepower, which allowed it to hit 253 miles per hour when tested in 2005, and James May famously hit this speed on Top Gear in 2006. There were plenty of special models, such as the Persang, one for Hermes. The Grand Sport was a Targa model, shown off in 2008, and it went on sale in 2009, and impressively had the same top speed as the standard model, though obviously with the roof on. The Super Sport model took the world record for fastest production car, as it hit 267 miles per hour due to the power increase to 1,184 horsepower. Again, it was driven by James May, who hit nearly 260 miles per hour on the Error-Lesienne test track. A Targa top model of the Super Sport was made known as the Grand Sport Vitesse, and it also took the world record for fastest convertible. The Veyron was received incredibly well, with Top Gear naming it Car of the Decade and it being praised as a marvel of engineering. Similarly to the Holy Trinity, it showed us what was to come and did something that had never been done before, to the point that high-performance cars are now categorised by pre-Veyron and post-Veyron. The F40 is often called the best supercar of all time and is easily one of the most recognisable Ferraris ever. Add this to the fact that it was the last road car to be approved by Enzo Ferrari and that it was designed to be his legacy. This is probably the most important Ferrari ever and sums up the brand perfectly. The F40 was designed based on the 288 GTO Evoluzione, which was developed for Group B in the World Endurance Championships, although it never ended up racing. The car was meant to be raw and intense, the exact opposite of the 959 and other sports cars that were seen as too luxurious by Ferrari. Their approach is shown best in the stripped-back interior, which is clearly inspired by racing. The F40 was developed in just 11 months, making the final result even more incredible. The body was designed by Pininfarina, and it featured a 2.9 litre twin-turbo V8 engine, putting out 471 horsepower. Mated to a 5-speed manual gearbox and using double wishbone suspension, this was the ultimate driver's car. This was also due to its lightweight nature, with Kevlar, carbon fibre and aluminium being used in the body and plastic windows. The F40 LM was the racing variant, and it competed in IMSA and endurance events, having some success predominantly in longer races, but it didn't win any major races or championships. The F40 Competizione was a limited run race car commissioned by a French importer for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The F40 had a mixed reception when it was launched in 1987, with it being seen as intense and even for some challenging to drive and completely impractical, but few could deny the excitement it brought and the visceral experience it evoked. It is now seen as a reminder of the past, when safety regulations were different and allowed such experiences that cannot be replicated nowadays. For the sheer buzz it caused and its ranking within the supercar world, the F40 takes third position. The Miura takes the runners-up spot due to it literally creating the term supercar and becoming the blueprint for supercars to come. It's also helped to cement Lamborghini as a high-performance brand to stay. The Miura began as a skunkworks project, with a prototype called the P400 being made. The board approved its continued development as it could be used as marketing if it was seen as unfit for production. It was also a first for Lamborghini, but also for the car world as well. It was the first two-seater, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive car, which is now the most popular setup for supercars. The compact design meant the transversely mounted V12 was merged with the gearbox and differential. The Bertone designed body was a hit at the 1966 Geneva Motor Show, leading it to go into production the next year. The first model was also called the P400, and 275 were made, which was encouraging for the brand. An S version of this would follow, with slight changes including an additional 20 horsepower, increasing the total to 365 in total. The P400 SV is the most recognisable Miura, and it had some slight changes again, such as an extra 15 horsepower over the S, whilst bigger changes such as a split sump and an optional limited slip differential also happened. There were a few other models which are less talked about due to their small production numbers. The Jota was made to meet FIA racing regulations and weighed 360 kilograms less than the standard Miura. It was also more powerful. It was sold to a private buyer, although it was crashed and burnt in the aftermath. There were a few recreations made from other Miuras, but only one original factory Lamborghini model was made. There are a few SVJ models made, mainly on special requests, and a one-off converted Roadster version was made of it. There was one official Miura Roadster, although it was only used as a show car. The Miura had a long-lasting effect on Lamborghini, as shown by the Miura concept in 2006 and the Aventador 50th anniversary models in 2016. The Miura is such an iconic supercar, somewhat helped by its appearance in the Italian Job in 1969. The Miura's impact on supercars cannot be denied, and for that reason, it takes second place. The F1 takes first place for the sheer ingenuity that was shown. It beat the Jaguar XJ220's top speed record by over 20 miles an hour, still being the fastest naturally aspirated car ever, and can keep up with or beat most modern supercars. It was inspired by the Honda NSX to mix performance and practicality, which was shown in the interior, which had air conditioning, a Kenwood stereo system, and custom bags made to fit in the luggage compartments. Along with the fact it could seat 3 people, it was also unique in that the steering wheel, pedals, and driver's seat couldn't be moved, as they were made to the specifications of the owner. But back to what made it so good. It was designed around being light and powerful, so it used materials like Kevlar, carbon fibre, titanium and magnesium, whilst having a 618 horsepower BMW V12 engine. To make the ultimate driver's car, a carbon monocoque chassis was used with a 6-speed manual gearbox and double wishbone suspension. There are a few other versions made across the 106 ever produced, which included prototypes and race cars. The LM was made to celebrate the F1 GTR, winning the 1995 24 Hours of Le Mans, and featured a fixed rear wing as well as more horsepower and an upgraded gearbox. The GT was a homologated version of the GTR, and the 3 made were the last F1s. Despite Murray not intending to go racing with the F1 GTR had success in the motorsport world. The GTR was lighter but less powerful due to engine rules, and it had a fixed rear wing. 9 were made for the 1995 season, which saw one win the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The next year saw further modifications, such as a larger splitter and a lighter gearbox. In 1997, it featured a longer nose and a rear end to increase downforce, and a 6-speed sequential gearbox was used, replacing the manual. The F1s would have mixed results and struggled later on in their campaigns to cars like the Mercedes CLK GTR and Porsche 911 GT1. Some GTRs were converted to become road legal. In my opinion, the F1 is the most important supercar ever, because it brought a level of performance that was unseen before, but it also showed that supercars could be somewhat practical and comfortable, which it hadn't previously been. Add this to the fact it was the first car for McLaren Automotive, which has been one of the most hyped car brands of the last decade, and this is in my eyes the most important supercar ever. Here is the full list. Please let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ratings, and if you enjoyed, please like and subscribe, and let me know if I should make more videos like this.